Hello, Ivy here. This week's podcast is entitled Identity and Power, Racism Within the Royal Framework, Episode 175. As an introduction, I'll quote from a podcast that I did probably a couple of years ago now, but these few lines I think are relevant in terms of the topic we're discussing and we'll discuss further in future episodes coming up. The first person of colour to become a member of the UK royal family. Harry and Meghan met in the middle of 2016. Their relationship was announced in October 2016. In May, on the 19th, 2018, Harry and Meghan got married. In March 2019, Kensington Palace announced that Prince Harry and Meghan had officially separated their offices and split their household from William and Kate. Harry and Meghan moved to Frogmore Cottage that April, ahead of the birth of their first child, and their offices moved from Kensington Palace to Buckingham Palace. Signs of things to come. Coexistence was not an option very early on, but no one in the British royal family ever thought that anyone would ever leave the fold. Never. No one was ever brave enough to think it was even a possibility. When it happened, the mouthpieces of the British royal family were lost for words. Neither the royal family or the royal rota ever considered themselves to be the cause of the problem, and who were the reason why the Sussexes left the UK and moved to another continent to raise their family and earn their own living. In October 2019, Meghan sued Associated Newspapers for publishing parts of a letter she wrote to her father. Prince Harry said in a statement, "Unfortunately, my wife has become one of the latest victims of a British tabloid press that wages campaigns against individuals with no thought to the consequences. A ruthless campaign that has escalated over the past year, throughout her pregnancy and while raising our newborn son." He added that he and Meghan continued to put on a brave face. As so many of you can relate to, I cannot begin to describe how painful it has been. Meghan would go on to win her lawsuit, and the Sussexes would eventually completely cut ties with several major UK tabloids. On the same day the lawsuit was announced, a clip from Meghan and Harry's ITV documentary Harry and Meghan, An African Journey was released, in which Meghan discussed her struggles as a new mom in the public eye. Any woman, especially when they're pregnant, you're really vulnerable, and so that was made really challenging. And then when you have a newborn, and especially as a woman, it's a lot, she told host Tom Bradby. So you add this on top of just trying to be a new mom or trying to be a newlywed. It's, I guess also thank you for asking, because not many people have asked if I'm okay. But it's a very real thing to be going through behind the scenes. Meghan would later say on her Archetypes podcast that during their tour of Africa, there was a fire in the room where Archie was supposed to be sleeping. But he was not in the room at that time of the incident. She said she was in tears and shaken by the incident, but was not permitted to speak of it publicly at the time, and wasn't allowed to cancel the further royal engagements she and Harry had scheduled. October the 20th, 2019. Meghan and Harry announce they will take family time off. On January the 8th, 2020, Harry and Meghan, who had been staying in Canada at the time, shocked the world when they announced they were stepping down as senior royals. After many months of reflection and internal discussions, we have chosen to make a transition this year in starting to carve out a progressive new role within this institution. The Sussexes said in a statement on Instagram, "We intend to step back as senior members of the royal family and work to become financially independent, while continuing to fully support Her Majesty the Queen. It is with your encouragement, particularly over the last few years, that we feel prepared to make this adjustment." Days later, Harry, King Charles and Prince William had a Sandringham summit to discuss the Sussexes' royal future. After the 90-minute discussion, Queen Elizabeth said in a statement, "Today, my family had a very constructive discussions on the future of my grandson and his family. My family and I are entirely supportive of Harry and Meghan's desire to create a new life as a young family. Although we would have preferred them to remain full-time working members of the royal family, we respect and understand their wish to live a more independent life as a family while remaining a valued part of my family." Just a week after formally leaving their roles as senior royals, Harry and Meghan announced the name of their new charitable foundation, Archewell. July 2020 was a tumultuous time for Prince Harry and Meghan. In November 2020, Meghan revealed in an op-ed that they had suffered a pregnancy loss that July. And a quote from Meghan, "Losing a child means carrying an almost unbearable grief, experienced by many, but talked about by few." She wrote, adding that she and Harry comforted one another while she was hospitalised. She described the moment during which she was tending to son Archie in heartbreaking detail. "After changing his diaper, I felt a sharp cramp. I dropped to the floor with him in my arms, humming a lullaby to keep us both calm. The cheerful tune, a stark contrast to my sense that something was not right," she wrote. "I knew, as I clutched my firstborn child, that I was losing my second." In happier news, in August 2020, a representative for the Sussexes confirmed that the couple had moved into their own home in the Santa Barbara area that July. Later that year, Meghan and Harry announced that they would be producing projects for Netflix. "Our lives, both independent of each other and as a couple, have allowed us to understand the power of the human spirit, of courage, resilience, and the need for connection," they said in a statement at the time. "Through our work with diverse communities and their environments, to shining a light on people and causes around the world, our focus will be on creating content that informs but also gives hope. The following few paragraphs I say with a caveat of what I'm about to say, that these are my personal thoughts on the process and possible outcomes, and nothing I am stating here is new. In terms of being in breach of the law, there's a whole chain of people who have carried out acts on the instruction of others. And even though to date, many, if not all, have been protected by powerful people, and some have fallen on their sword out of loyalty or promise of being looked after. That chain of command has no doubt grown enormously. One only has to look in the incitement of hate business model and strategy that has been employed since 2016. It is a whole corporation now, with activity in parts of the world, not just in the UK, behind secure gates. Something of that nature could not be dreamt up or managed or delivered by any close to home, as I believe the chain of command is long, very long indeed. There are people in UK media, for an example, who have breached certain areas of the law on more than one occasion, and I am certain that they feel protected. I believe that they are very wrong, and they should get lawyered up. Not everyone is going to fall on their sword. Not everyone is going to just lay low and keep quiet. Others will appear on every TV network who will have them. And like it has already been proven, when any feel so confident that they are protected, they will be, and have in at least one case to date, become loose with their mouth and the sounds that come out of it. I bet that person no longer has the contact number that is still functional now. The speed in which footage was removed from the airways that day, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, and this has an Australian connection, was evidence in itself of the command chain. In due course, the questions will rise way above the debris at the bottom. That line of frontline harassment and bullying has been used up now, and too many truth bombs dropped. The double standards are building. There are enough people in that supply chain of law breaking to bring the truth to the forefront one day. History books will reflect the truth of this campaign and the impact it has had to the UK. But let us just list a few examples of double standards. I will quote from various UK publications, all of whom are part of the invisible contract. Someone needs to consider the risk of injury of trying to ride the fence since 2016, and to remind themselves only royalty have some chance of escape from the full force of the law, but the rest of you doing their bidding, or unknowingly doing the bidding of someone else, needs to remember that you are the fodder. You are expendable. In terms of media, Royal Rota, you are just fish bait. Remember that when you spout your venom and your racist tropes towards the Sussexes. As one of you went into print when tabloids were accused by a current, at the time QC, he's now a KC, about the tone of the majority of the articles on the Sussexes, particularly Meghan, contained an undertone of racism. Within minutes of that being placed on a social media platform, one of those hacks happily posted that there was indeed a tone of racism in most of their articles. Happy to put that in writing on a public forum. But that writing undertones of racism in a newspaper every day is not against the law. Once again, I say, with my non-legal brain, if the themes of articles over almost 9 years now, but when this first was done and said about that post on a social media platform, it was 6 years of coverage. It has increased since then by another 3 years. At the time, it has continued in a variety of ways since, and as I said, is not far away from 9 years now. Articles contain tones of racism, which is one of the many areas that the UK media personnel skated around thinking they were being smart. I would say there is a case to answer, a case on more than one level, and it needs to be answered and questioned in a place of law. I'm sure that day is coming for a few in UK media professions, and I mean printed as well as televised. There are other groups, but that is the main one, which is not a surprise as they are bottom of the food chain when it comes to the societal groups I've mentioned many times before, since 2016. Let us name some of the examples. And this section is entitled, How Dark Will the Baby Be? Some examples of offensive and tone-deaf rhetoric by members of the British royal family, or Team UK government officials, or its media on the British royal family's behalf. Here we go. You'll recognise these. Expat or immigrant. English or European. UK monarchy or English monarchy. Royalty or not real royalty. White refugee or black refugee. Criminal activity or royal life. Mistress, concubine or adulterer. Office worker or servant. Prince Harry or Prince Andrew, or one and the same. The Sussexes or the Cambridges. Which Commonwealth countries need a visa to travel to the UK? And which Commonwealth countries do not? Refugees or roaches. Treatment of Meghan versus Kate in the media. The clear as day double standards used in the press for Meghan versus Kate. Office worker who attend for minimal hours, and servants who work long hours and are paid poorly. The ethnic origin split between those who work above stairs and those who do not is stark. Not least because there was a policy to do just that if one worked for UK royalty. The British royal family are exempt from adhering to the Equality Act, so it has come as no surprise. I am born here and I am British versus no, but where do you really come from? Where do your people come from? How dark will the baby be? UK tabloid terminology when referring to people of colour. Details of some of those that I've just read out in a little bit more detail. Expat or immigrant. UK media pundits in all scenarios use the same phrases and descriptions. When discussing the fallout of leaving the European Union and the sympathy for the people from the UK who left for a life abroad in Europe, are always, without fail, described as expats, i.e. patriots. The same media, when discussing coming to live and work in the UK, no matter how many years they have been here, they are described as immigrants when they are people of colour. Dictionary definition of these two labels is as follows. Expatriate, someone who lives outside of their native country. Immigrant, someone who comes to live permanently in another country. So right off the bat, we see a problem. Both words apply to anyone that lives outside of their native country. A name change helps. The House of Windsor had only been established in 1917 in response to World War I, and Mountbatten served as a stand-in surname for Prince Philip. He originally came into the world as Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, but was forced to renounce his titles when he married Elizabeth and thus took his grandparents' name as his surname. All references to German names within royal circles were changed, not least because in Britain the anger over the loss of life of children from the East End of London due to a bombing. Saxe-Coburg and Gotha changed to Windsor. How very convenient. White refugee or black refugee. Black refugees have been described as roaches by UK right-wing press and some elected officials. And all of the UK right-wing press use emotive language and show graphic images and terminology meant to stir up hate. Only black refugees are being transported to another continent to be processed. It is only legal challenges which have temporarily stopped that action being taken. White refugees have been supplied with an online visa system, which is processed within days for necessary escape from warfare conditions. White refugees can travel to the UK within a few days. White refugees are offered housing within the UK households who themselves have been given funds to help these desperate people fleeing war. Lots of logos and banners produced welcoming, and rightly so, people from the Ukraine. No such process is in place for black refugees. All people fleeing war and the subsequent fear for loss of their lives deserve this treatment. But there is no denying the UK has once again proved itself adopting double standards when it comes to the treatment of white and black people fleeing war zones. Meghan and Harry, we feel your pain and we share your joys. Sussex Squad will always have your back. We cover 24/7 across all time zones. Just know that we are all doing our bit behind the scenes, supporting you and your projects, and many of our own which follow the same philosophy. We are like virtual parents and aunties and uncles who will always have your back. We are immensely proud of you. UK seems to be on this alienate people and nations since the Brexit vote, but expect to secure meaningful trade deals. The population of the UK, particularly the working class, is suffering because the top societal groups manage to persuade a sizable proportion to hate certain groups of people. The business model of hate incitement continues to grow. It does not bode well for the UK or England when Scotland and potentially Wales and Northern Ireland claim their independence. Time has come for that top-tier societal group to focus on things that help the country and cease putting the majority of UK resources in chasing and trying to punish two people who decided to have an independent, self-funding life. Creating spares like items in a row of test tubes does not create duty. It creates bondage. I respectfully state that Harry and Meghan are not the problem. But there are many self-created problems within the UK that could do with a little more attention right now. The attitudes towards Meghan joining the British royal family has reinforced what most people of colour experience most days. We have come to realise that no matter what is stated on paper as being a necessary requirement for something, when it comes to people of colour, we are always expected to have more. White people in those spaces are never questioned about their qualifications to be in such a space. It is assumed that they must be all right because they are there. Black people are not afforded such grace. It is tiring, to say the least. Equally, we understand how hurt Harry must feel, with his hopes for acceptance from his family, has resulted in the current state. And worst of all for the British royal family, but the best for Harry and Meghan and their supporters, it was all done on a global stage. Witnesses and supporters have grown over the 9 years and will continue to grow. The reputation of the UK monarchy has taken a very big hit, and it was all self-inflicted. The royal family chose to wave a metaphorical artist palette of colours, pretending to be so inclusive, and all prepared to paint a new painting to represent this new era of welcoming the first person of colour into the UK monarchy for many centuries, and the first person of colour UK princess. Unfortunately, the palette was performative, and the only colour acceptable is still white. No need to paint a new portrait. There are plenty out there depicting the enslaved. UK monarchy has made sure it is still operating loud and clear in the UK by not only having offensive paintings in their homes, the stolen jewels they all parade around in. The royal family reenacted master and slave in the way that they have continued to hunt down Harry and Meghan, like slaves gone bad. Not a wise move. I repeat, as I've said many times before, there is international law for a reason. Meghan was regarded as an outsider coming into the British royal family and taking the role from a classic English rose. Colonial attitude. View people of colour as less than, but refugees and immigrants who are Caucasian are not an issue as long as they occupy jobs that most UK people are not qualified to do. For example, doctors. Black asylum seekers of refuge in the UK are treated less favourably than those from the Ukraine, for example. Royal family are exempt, as we've mentioned earlier, from equality and diversity laws. Staff cannot complain whilst working there, and it is only marginally better to complain when a person of colour leaves the employ of the British royal family, because the employer is deemed not to be breaking any law, because they indeed do not have to adhere to it anyway. People of colour are rarely allowed to work above stairs, i.e. suitable for servant roles only. The white supremacy sign has been done by a British royal family member a number of times. Evidence exists. It is not a pose that can be accidentally done. It was also done by another nation's leader in a group photo, which included the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. No one in the British royal family had a problem with that, as they do the same pose in several of their engagements too. The message loud and very clear about their thoughts of the new Duchess. This is another complex and sensitive topic that has many different aspects and opinions. According to some sources, there is a link between Brexit and racism in the UK. As the referendum campaign and the results have increased racial discrimination and hate crime. Some experts argue that Brexit has appealed to people who hold racist views or want to reduce immigration, and has emboldened them to express their prejudice more openly. Some also suggest that Brexit has contributed to an environment of intolerance and division, where people from ethnic minorities feel more vulnerable and excluded. However, not everyone agrees that Brexit is the cause or the main factor of racism in the UK. Some people argue that racism has long and a deep history in Britain, and that Brexit is only a symptom or a consequence of underlying social and economic problems. Some also claim that Brexit is not motivated by racism, but by other issues such as sovereignty, democracy, trade, or culture. As for the link between Brexit and the royal family's lack of acceptance of a person of colour entering the family, This is more a speculative and subjective question. There is no clear evidence that Brexit has directly influenced the royal family's attitude or behaviour towards Meghan or other people of colour. However, some people may see a connection between Brexit and the royal family as symbols or representatives of different visions of Britain. One that is more diverse, open and modern, and one that is more traditional, closed and nostalgic. These visions may clash or coexist in different ways, depending on one's perspective and experience. Conclusion. This is a complex and sensitive topic that has been discussed a lot recently. According to some sources, there is evidence of racism and discrimination within the British royal family and its history. For example, some documents, as we already said, reveal that Buckingham Palace banned ethnic minorities from office roles until at least the late 1960s. And let me say here, there's very little difference now in 2025 to that date in the 1960s in terms of people of colour working above stairs. The Queen also has a personal exemption from laws that prevent race and sex discrimination, which means that people working for her household, and currently now the King's household, cannot complain to the courts if they feel they have been treated unfairly. Bet that comes in handy for members of the royal family. On the other hand, some sources suggest that there may have been people of colour in the royal family in the past, such as Queen Charlotte, who was married to King George III and was allegedly descended from a Portuguese noblewoman with African ancestry. However, this is not widely accepted or confirmed by historians, and I would say from things that I have read, quite a few books on this topic, there's almost an even split, possibly slightly more for those who don't believe that there were people of colour in the royal family at that time. But there are a fair number, a very close number, percentage-wise, of historians who do think that. The difference is not all of them feel comfortable to put that in print in their books. But they have certainly vocalised such thoughts, apparently, with other historians. More recently, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, have spoken out about their experiences of racism and lack of support from the royal family and the British media. As we all know, and won't need to go into detail here, how it was revealed in the Oprah Winfrey interview that they revealed that a senior royal had speculated about how dark their son's skin would be before he was born. They also said that they felt isolated and unprotected by the institution, and as we all know, Meghan had suicidal thoughts and was denied help by the royal family, but thankfully the Spencer family came to the forefront and she did receive help from a very good friend of Princess Diana. These allegations have sparked a lot of debate and controversy among the public and the media. Some people have expressed sympathy and solidarity with Harry and Meghan, while others have accused them of being disrespectful and ungrateful to the Queen and the monarchy. Some people have also called for a reform or an abolition of the monarchy, arguing that it is an outdated and oppressive institution. As you can see, this is a very complicated issue that involves many different perspectives and opinions. I hope this summary has helped you understand some of the main points and arguments. If you want to learn more, you can check out the sources, as per usual, in the reference list at the end of all of the articles that I do for the SGUK podcast channel. Another point of view here, in fairness to the article as a whole. This is a possible hypothesis, but not a proven fact. According to some sources, there may be a correlation between supporting Brexit and supporting the monarchy, as both may reflect a certain vision of Britain that is more conservative, nationalist and nostalgic. Some sources also suggest that the royal family itself was divided over Brexit, with some members favouring Remain and others favouring Leave. However, the royal family has not officially expressed its position on Brexit and has tried to maintain a neutral and constitutional role. However, correlation does not imply causation, and there may be other factors that influence people's views on Brexit and the monarchy. For example, age, education, income, region, and the media consumption may also affect how people vote and what they think of the royal family. Moreover, not all Brexit supporters or royal supporters are necessarily racist or opposed to diversity, but there is no doubt that Brexit supporters are more vocal, and in the end ultimately had the edge in the vote. Some may have other reasons or motivations for their preferences. Officially, the media states that it is difficult to say for sure whether there is a link between Brexit and the royal family's lack of acceptance of a person of colour entering the family. It may depend on how one interprets the evidence and the arguments. I would say there is no doubt about it at all. Within the workplace and outside of it, including just occupying space in a department store of a supermarket, the change in the atmosphere and the way people spoke to and about people of colour was instant. Many people felt emboldened to say things loudly that were said previously in low key. Throughout all the years that have followed, that stance has been reinforced. I hope that the younger people of all backgrounds find space to create a better environment in the decades to come. Personally, I am glad that I am the age that I am. I am very conscious of where I socialise, and there are very few visits that I do on my own now. Increasing parts of the world are creating the same environments. History has shown time and time again there is a cycle that takes place every few decades or so, and without fail, the experiences have been similar at each phase of the changes, and the society returns to equilibrium. The details of the cycle have been discussed in previous podcasts. Stay safe, be vigilant, find your happy places, and enjoy the company. Everyone should recognise their own value and never allow anyone to tell you otherwise. The British royal family don't even have a happy place within their own family setting, or even in the wider firm. Their time is coming to an end, and that end may well be drawn out, but it is coming. It is going to be like watching an implosion of a family and an entity via Netflix, except it will be real life. It is self-destruction on an epic scale, and they are the only ones who believe that they can ride this storm and business will return as usual. They are wrong. Let them enjoy the direction of travel in the UK currently. It won't last, and neither will the royal family. Society in the future will have had enough years of attrition, and like the cycle always does, it will balance itself, and all the weeds that would otherwise destroy the new growth will be removed by nature, and towards the end, removed the last few by decree. The UK will be just fine, and the revamp in years to come. I am beyond relieved the Sussexes are out of that toxic environment. Visit who you feel comfortable to visit. That is your business alone. The best thing you ever did was to remove your family away from that environment. Right now, the USA is on a collision course with itself too. That too will pass. I hope you will continue to have more than one safe place to be your base whilst this turbulence is still hovering. We are extremely proud of what you have achieved, creating a wonderful legacy for your children. That's it for another week. I am still writing articles, but I cannot currently publish them on my website for a short while. In the last 3 weeks, I have had scammers ferreting around one part of my website, which contains the articles, so I have made it private for a while. I've done that in the last few days, whilst a third-party agency is looking into the group who are operating from a European base, but targeting a number of websites around the globe. They have form for changing their name, every couple of days. I'll start again. They have form for changing their name every couple of years or so, but operating just the same. The evidence is growing by the day. Excuse my croaky throat, but as I'm nearly finished now, I'll carry on. I look forward to hearing from you all later, and during the week. There's a lot going on. There's a lot more we'll be talking about on a range of topics, not just racism. That is included, but there are many, many other important topics that we're going to cover. And your opinions and thoughts are valued. So I look forward, as I said, to hearing from you all later and during the week. So for now, it's bye from Ivy, bye from me. Bye.